Hi, my name is Boris Scholl, and I'm a lead program manager on the Azure Tools team. In this short video, I'm going to show you the new features we have added to support creating virtual machines preview using Azure Resource Manager, and our latest list of Azure images that target the developer audience. As for the agenda, we'll look into the new tooling that we have done in order to support the newly announced Azure Virtual Machines preview. I want to point out that all the remaining tooling for virtual machines, such as File New, Publish Web Applications, Server Explorer support, as well as configuration support, is still there. So this part of the tooling is completely different. Then I will jump into a quick demo of our new tools to show you how great it actually is. The second part of the video we will spend on the Visual Studio images itself. I will talk you through which ones are available to the public and you can use for testing purposes, and which ones are only for our MSDN subscribers. I will demo how to easily create VMs by just using the browser, so there is no need for PowerShell or Visual Studio. So with that, let's get started. So with the announcement of the Virtual Machines preview using Azure Resource Manager, we also introduced a new set of tooling to support Azure Virtual Machines. So we have a new project type. It's called Azure Resource Group. The project type really only contains the artifacts needed by Azure Resource Manager to create an environment. So to make that really easy for you, you can choose from an existing templates as starting points. So we offer you templates in the File New flow, as I will show you, to start with, let's say, a single VM, or you can use a VM with a virtual network or behind a load balancer. So once you've created a project, we give you a very rich template editing experience, including schema validation and IntelliSense. But as you can imagine, those JSON templates can get really complex and long. So we also added a nice JSON outline view that gives you a great overview of what's in your JSON template. And then we also invested in making it really easy for you to add resources such as databases or servers or extensions to an existing JSON template. And I will show you all of that. But the really cool part, what we've also done, and it's not quite obvious, once you get to the point where you want to publish that template, meaning provisioning a new environment, as opposed to before, in our tools before, this time we're using PowerShell tools for Visual Studio to actually kick off the publishing process. What that means is you can actually customize the entire process to meet your needs. So with that, enough the talk, let's jump right into a demo. So let's look at the Azure Resource Manager tooling for Virtual Machines Preview. So we're going to start with New Project, and as you can see, I have a new project type. It's called Azure Resource Group. For those of you who have played with the Azure Deployment Project, this is gone. Azure Resource Group is really now a self-containing project, so there is no relationship to a web project whatsoever. This project only contains artifacts that are related to Azure Resource Manager. So let's create this one, call it Connect Demo, and hit OK. So the first thing that pops up is the Select Azure Template wizard. So if you remember what I was mentioning before, we're going to give you a set of templates as a starting point. So don't be confused. This list of templates is going to change frequently because we can update those templates dynamically. But the main purpose of those templates is really giving you an easy starting point so that you don't need to build a template from scratch. So for the purpose of this demo, let's start with a simple Windows Server 2012 R2 data center virtual machine and hit OK. Now that the project has been created, I have 3 folders in here. There's a scripts folder, a templates folder, and a tools folder. So the tools folder contains a tool that's called AC Copy, and that's in case you want to add a web project later on and you want to copy like a web deploy package into a storage account. So the really interesting ones for our demo are really the templates folder and the scripts folder. Let's start with the templates folder. Let's expand it a little bit so that you can see that better. So we have 2 JSON files, basically. The first one is Windows Azure Virtual Machine.json, and the other one is Windows Azure Virtual Machines parent.dev.json. So this one here, if I double click on this one, this really represents my environment definition based on Azure Resource Manager. So this is a JSON template that has a lot of parameters. It also has like all the resources I need. So in order to make it really easy for you to navigate through that, we added what we call the JSON outline. So on the left-hand side, it almost looks like a Server Explorer, but it's not. So we have a JSON outline window. And if I expand this one, I can see all the resources that are in my JSON template. So in that case, because I'm using a virtual machine preview, in that case I need a storage account, a public IP address, virtual network, a network interface, and a virtual machine. But also, I get a list of all the parameters. So let's look at one of the parameters a little bit closer, because that allows me to highlight our great editing experience. Let's go to virtual network name, double click on it, and here I highlighted it. And so now if I'm going to go in here, I can basically go to all the occurrences where virtual network name is being used, which is actually great. It makes it really easy for you to navigate through it. So let's get back and look at a little bit at the advanced editing capabilities. So here I have a virtual machine. What I could do now is I can actually go in here and say, hey, you know what? I want to create a new virtual machine. Let's start by typing. And let's do this and take this one down. And let's start by adding a type. So I have type. And then, as you can see, we have IntelliSense support in here, and now I could say I want to have a Microsoft SQL Server. So if I add the Microsoft SQL Server, I can add a name. What's this? Name. And call it my SQL Server. As you can notice on the left-hand side, we add that node right away, and you can actually see it in the resource node. So, but typing is really hard. I just wanted to highlight all the IntelliSense support as well as our great editing support for Azure resources here. So let's take this one out and look at another way to add a new resource to the project. Up here we have this nice little icon that says Add Resource. So in here we get all the JSON snippets that we think are important for developers to build like dev test environments in the cloud. And the list is also dynamically created, so the list might also change over time. So don't be surprised if you all of a sudden see more resources pop up in here. So let's get back to our example. Let's say I want to add a SQL database to it. Let's find a SQL database, and I call it customer data. But what I need for a SQL database is I need a SQL server, right? So in here we say, hey, create a new SQL server, and I can add my server to it, and then I just add it to my project. And as you can see on the left-hand side, everything has been added. And it's kind of hard to see, but what's newly added is really shown in bold here. So in here you can see I added a my server as my SQL Server host, and then I'm going to have a database on it. It's called customer data. So now if I want to deploy that project, I can just go in here and say deploy, which brings up that nice little dialog here where I can select a subscription if I have multiple subscriptions. Let's check this one. Lets me create a new resource group or select an existing one. Let's call it Connect Demo. It's good in the West US, and say create. So now in here I could actually just start deploying, but I would need to enter a bunch of parameters here. For the sake of time, I've already done that. I already have a project that has all the parameters added. So in here, what I want to point out is the PowerShell script. So if I look at the PowerShell script, think about I'm in here. Let's go back to deploy. This is my resource group. That's basically what I was just showing, right? And so if I hit the deploy button, what's happening is we actually use the PowerShell script that's in the scripts folder. So let's look at the PowerShell script quickly, because there's also something cool I want to point out. So in here, I have write host, which is a PowerShell command. if I'm going to do this, as you can see, I have PowerShell IntelliSense. That's actually a very great tool that we added in this release, which is our PowerShell tools for Visual Studio. With that, you have debug functionality, you have IntelliSense functionality, and so on and so forth. So you can really do proper PowerShell development in here. So here I'm using PowerShell for deploy. Just updated a string, and let's do deploy it. Go to my resource group and start deploying it. And as you can see, here I have the output. I'm using PowerShell for deploy. So this is actually the proof that we're really using the PowerShell commandlet to deploy the Azure Resource Group. So while it's deploying, I just want to recap what we've seen. For Azure Resource Manager type of scenarios like virtual machines preview, we provide you with a great tooling set that allows you to get started from existing templates, so you don't need to actually start from scratch. We also added rich editing experience for the JSON template. And then for the publishing part, we really took out all the API calls. There is no magic that Visual Studio does. You can actually go just to the PowerShell script, and then you can see what's happening there, and you can customize it. So for example, you could replace the write host, I'm using PowerShell for deploy, by any commandlet that you want, and we would basically execute it. So now that my resources have been created, let's go to Server Explorer and look at the SQL databases. In here, I have my database, so that worked. And then here's my customers database, that worked. And let's look at the virtual machines itself. So in here, I created a virtual machine. It was called BMS SQL FE with that deployment here. You can see it has a slightly different icon than the ones below. So the difference here is that by having that icon, we basically tell you, hey, this is a virtual machine preview. It's not a virtual machine that's been there before. So then if you just want to manage it, you right-click on it, say configure, and it will take you straight to the portal. So this forward link will take you straight to the portal, and then you can use the portal to configure and customize your virtual machine. So we've just seen how to create dev test environments in Azure using our latest Azure Resource Manager tools. Let's talk a little bit about development in the cloud. Some of you may know that we also offer images that have Visual Studio in it and target different developer scenarios. So we can really think about two scenarios. So first, there are public images, like the Visual Studio Community 2013 image. Obviously, we always update those images to have the latest update. We also have images with our latest release candidates or preview versions on it, like the Visual Studio Community 2015 RC with Azure SDK. So you can think about those images. They really give you a great jumpstart, not only for developing if you're like in Visual Studio Community, but also for testing out the latest and greatest Visual Studio features. So for example, the release candidate image for Visual Studio Community lets you just create a virtual machine, and you can test all the new features without even needing to install Visual Studio RC on your machine. So the other category we really have there is images that are specific to our MSDN subscribers. So examples of those images are client images, like Windows 8.1 and Windows 7 images. We've got the feedback quite a lot that for real development scenarios or testing scenarios, the target platform is really meant to be the platform which is developed on. So we added Windows 8.1 and Windows 7 images. That should make it really easy for you to test your applications on those type of platforms. In addition to that, we also added an image that already has Visual Studio installed on it, on a Windows 8.1. So you don't need to bother like spending the time installing the latest Visual Studio version on an 8.1 image. It's just there for you and can provision it in a blink of an eye. The other thing I want to point out, we also have images with Visual Studio Ultimate on it, and they're on a Windows Server operating system. In that case, it's Windows Server 2012. The reason for those images being on Windows Server 2012 is because we think about those images more like a developer desktop. Those images come not only with Visual Studio, but also with SharePoint on it, and SQL Server Developer Edition. They also come with a bunch of scripts that allow you to configure those type of images right away, or those virtual machines right away after they've been fully provisioned. So you have, in pretty much no time, you have an entire development environment for, let's say, a SharePoint scenario. So with that, let's have a quick look at how to provision one of those images using just the browser. No PowerShell, no Visual Studio. As promised, now I'm going to show you a very easy way to quickly spin up a virtual machine using the browser. So this is not about PowerShell, and this is not about tools. So let's go in here, and this is the new portal, portal.azure.com. And I can go in here, say File New. And then in here, as you can see, I already created one. But let's say I want to create a new virtual machine. I'm going to go to Compute. I get a selection of what we think are great virtual machines to show, but I can also go to the marketplace in here. So the marketplace, I can actually filter for virtual machines, and in here I just need to type Visual Studio. So then it's searching, and it's showing me all the Visual Studio images that are available. So I could just select one here now. Let's say I'm going to grab the community one. And there is a nice little description, what's on that image, what it is for, and like our legal terms and privacy statement. And then you can just create it from here. The other way of creating a virtual machine through a browser I want to show you here is, let me open a new tab and go to azure.com, because that's actually a pretty cool way. So on azure.com, you have the marketplace as well. In the marketplace, you can actually also say, okay, I want to have a Visual Studio machine, and then search for it. So now I get all the Visual Studio machines. So remember what I was mentioning before. There are machines that are available to MSDN subscribers exclusively, and those are being marked with that MSDN flag up here. So if you're not an MSDN subscriber, those images you can't provision at that point. You really need to be signed in with a subscription that is associated with an MSDN account. So let's pick one here. Let's pick the Visual Studio Ultimate one. So this will take you to a page that also describes what that virtual machine is about, what you can do with it. It also has some recommendations for you, what other virtual machines you might be interested in. And then you can just hit Create Virtual Machine, and that takes you straight to the portal. If you're already signed in, it will take you directly to the portal. If you're not signed in, you will be asked to sign in to the portal again. And then you're basically here at the very same blade, as we call it, that allows you to spin off that virtual machine right away. So I could say in here, Connect Demo Ultimate. Isn't it too long? Let's call it Connect Demo Alt. Then as a user, be sure. Remember, this is the user you would use for logging in through remote desktop. And let's add a password, and then I can just create it. So now it's creating the virtual machine in here, as you can see. And then I already created one, just for the sake of time. I click on this one, and then once the machine is up and running, that blade will open, and you can just connect to it. And you can open the RDP file, connect to the machine, and say I need to have Connect Demo, and then use the password, sign into it. And then I basically get signed into the virtual machine, and from then on I can just use it using remote desktop. So now that I've remote desktoped into the machine, you can see Visual Studio. I have a shortcut right on the desktop. I also remember that I mentioned some of our virtual machines are more like developer desktops. This one is one of them, and as you can see, there's like a Configure SharePoint page on it. There's a link to Configure SharePoint with Active Directory, Configure SQL Server. It also comes with a bunch of preset scripts. So if you want to actually start configuring the SharePoint farm, you can just do so by executing the script or customize the script. And then all you need to do is basically, once you've set up, run any of those scripts, you just double click on Visual Studio. Visual Studio boots up, you need to sign in, and then you're good to go. So As you've seen, this is really, really easy if you want to set up a developer desktop in the cloud quickly. It's a great benefit that we think you can take advantage of it, and we keep expanding on that offer. All right, now that we've seen how easily you can create a virtual machine from a browser, it's about time to talk a little bit about resources that we can offer you to get deeper into those topics. So Azure.com is in general a very good website for anything related to Azure. As you've seen in the demo, go to Azure.com, click on Marketplace, and then you can filter for all those images that are available. Another thing I would advise you to go to is Channel 9. On the Azure Resource Manager itself, if you want to get a deeper understanding of how it works, you can go to Channel 9. There are a lot of recordings about Azure Resource Manager, how it works internally, and that also makes it very easy for you to understand where the tools are coming from and how everything fits together. Lastly, if you're wondering if you're an MSDN subscriber or a public Azure subscriber, so how can you, which image applies to you, whether it's an MSDN one or one in a public gallery, there's a pretty good blog post up on Visual Studio blog that talks about the Visual Studio images. So with that, I hope you enjoyed it, and I thank you for your attention, and I hope you're going to play around with our great tools.